Hello everyone, Ryan at Pre-Conciliar Radio. Today we are going to talk about the latest booster shot of Vatican II that is coming out of the Synod on Synodality. I made my thumbnail and catchphrase for this video because I think it's a really good way to view the Synod on Synodality, which has been suffering a suffocating level of ambiguity. The way we should view the Synod on Synodality, and I'm going to show you why we should view it this way, but the way that we should view the Synod on Synodality is a shot in the arm of Vatican II. The original doses are wearing off, the parishes are closing, the experiment is failing, and just like in 2020, the people in charge are telling you that means we need a booster. We were told in the original doses that this would be it. No more changes. But the Synod on Synodality, if you listen to it at all, and the leaders, including the past and current pontiff, they talk about it as the fulfillment of Vatican II. Apparently Vatican II wasn't good enough. And so today I'm going to talk about the latest booster. And by booster, I mean change. Now, while most of my audience and my position is that of traditional Catholicism, meaning a non-changing Catholic Church, I do also want to talk to those who, probably faithful Catholics, most Catholics, who are used to the changes after the Second Vatican Council. They're very comfortable with it. They're not getting pressure from Rome. They're not getting pressure from their bishop. They're not called schismatic or weird or rigid. But that's today. And if you don't get the latest software update that's coming out with the Synod on Synodality, you'll be joining us too. Because as we will see, or as I am going to attempt to demonstrate, this is of course my opinion, I think it's historically borne out, Vatican II introduced into the psychology of the Church that everything was up for grabs. Everything could be changed. And while the Second Vatican Council was unique in that it changed many things drastically, like no other ecumenical council had ever done, not everything was changed. And here comes the booster shot to introduce more change, because maybe if we just changed everything, we'd finally get that new springtime that never arrived. So what is that change that I'm talking about? The change I'm talking about is that the Synod on Synodality has recently, I believe it was late last week, introduced not just a tweak, not just an alteration, but a complete revamping of the Holy Rosary. All new mysteries. We're not talking like adding a day of like the luminous mysteries that St. John Paul II did. No, we're talking about all new mysteries. Out with the old, in with the new. Here's your new booster of modernism. I'm not going to go into each of the mysteries. I think plenty of channels have already done that. You can also Google New Rosary Synod on Synodality and read up on them. They're nauseatingly, I don't know what the right word is, cringe. They're just soft. There's no substance to them. I mean, you could read it and say, okay, like clearly it's a passage in scripture, but the way they frame it, it's not that way. And they also, by they, I mean the drafters of this new rosary, they have attached spiritual gifts to these mysteries that you pray. One of them, and I kid you not, is diversity. That's it. No, not like diversity of spiritual fruits or anything like, no, just diversity. So if you pray this rosary, apparently you will get diversity, whatever that means. It sounds like a California corporate board meeting. So you can check those out. I would actually recommend Anthony Stein's Returning to Tradition, because for me, it made me so angry when I read this on my own. And Anthony, to his credit, made it a very humorous and enjoyable way to get this news. I found myself laughing with the way he presented each mystery, and he goes through each mystery. But I'm going to tie in this latest booster update with a bit of a forward signaling as to what this channel will be about, because I know, I've only made two. I don't have a ton of subscribers, but to the people who are watching, it's a new channel. Everybody wants to know uh, with new content, what type of channel will this be, or what type of podcaster is this? Because people have to self-select. There's so much media out there. And I think the title of my show really says a lot, but I want to add a little more context to that, and why this brand new rosary is just such a perfect example of why I thought I needed to start making some videos. I think what really has plagued the church for the last 50 plus years is the Second Vatican Council. What is the Second Vatican Council? The laity have no idea, and that's not their fault, because every pope since the council has disagreed with his predecessor on what the Second Vatican Council was. The Second Vatican Council to John the 23rd was not the Second Vatican Council to Paul VI. And the Second Vatican Council was not the Second Vatican Council of Paul VI that it was to St. John Paul II. Benedict, who was called John Paul II's Rottweiler, had a different view than his predecessor. Pope Francis had a completely different view than I think any of them. And now who knows with Pope Leo XIV? So how can we as laity make sense of the Second Vatican Council when our own leaders have no idea what it is? I'm not here to actually make sense of it, but more so to make sense of what we should do, while powers that be, men in bishop miters, maybe finally authoritatively figure out what the hell this thing ever was. Because now, you might have been really comfortable. Maybe you're just a really standard Catholic, raised post-council, go to the new mass, attend the new rites, confession, baptism, etc. Never really got hung up on the Second Vatican Council, just kind of accepted it, just kind of went with it. And you felt good about those things. Well, you're going to start feeling really uncomfortable in the next coming years as more and more changes come about. If you thought after 1969 all the changes had already been made, you're in for a rude awakening. Now your rosary is outdated. Just like your iPhone. Seems you need a new software update every 3 months. That's what the Synod on Synodality is going to force people, even very non-trad Catholics, to confront and think about. Where is your limiting principle? Because the church, since the Second Vatican Council, seems to have no limiting principle on change whatsoever. Everything is up in the air. And if we want to talk about the spirit of Vatican II, it's always talked about, rather than Vatican II itself, I would say the spirit of Vatican II is perpetual and constant change. Just like critical theory in the universities, we have Synod on Synodality, or the spirit of Vatican II. Everything should be questioned, everything should be challenged, everything should be changed, including your rosary now. So are you going to go along with the latest software update? Are you going to pray this new rosary to get diversity points? Or will you stick to the old one? Well, okay, which old one? The old one with 4 sets of mysteries per week or 3? And that's the problem, is that since the council, we have been given, at best, 2 options, pre-conciliar, post-conciliar. But at worst, we've had a variety of options, if you're aware of these things. And then the question becomes, what do I do? Is it okay to do this? Is it okay to do that? I'll give you a quick example of how, because a lot of people think it's all about just the Latin Mass. And that's what I used to think. But then I started to realize just how horrifyingly divergent everything got after the council. And I'll give you a quick example. I was in one of my favorite Catholic bookstores, and I came across this beautiful 4-book volume set of the Liturgy of the Hours. And as you can see, I collect a lot of books, and I thought it would look really nice behind me. So I get in line, and I'm about to check out, and something made me pause, and I decided to Google it, just to make sure nothing had changed in it since the council. And if you know anything about the Liturgy of the Hours, there just seems to be no reason why that would change. I pull out my phone, I Google it, and sure enough, the council changed the hours. So I went up to the owner of the bookstore, and because I had Googled, what were the hours before, it was called the breviary. And I asked her, do you have a traditional breviary set? She didn't know what I was talking about. I explained to her, and I still had the 4-volume set of the current hours in my hand, and I explained to her, oh, well, I just Googled it, that the Second Vatican Council changed it. She didn't know this. I don't particularly think this is a trad. I didn't think that she was like a traditional Catholic. I've met her before. I've talked to her. She seems to be, what we would call normie or normal. And a look of, I don't want to say horror, but she seemed it disturbed her to know this. It disturbed me to find this out. And then I started looking deeper and deeper. And I realized that everything had changed, to the point that now Catholics are in a position where they have to choose. Do I practice the faith in a pre-conciliar notion, in a post-conciliar notion? Do I mix the two? I like this rite of confession, but I like this rite of baptism. I like the old calendar, but I like the new fasting rules. There's just tons of options. And it seems to be that everyone then has to decide, do I go to the old Mass or the new Mass? Do I follow the old calendar or the new calendar? The old Friday penance laws or the new Friday penance laws? The new liturgy hours, or they're right back there, actually. I finally got them. The old breviary. And that's like 10% of the changes. There's so much more. I could just go on and on. Old, new, old, new, old, new. And then how do we discern the council itself? How binding is it? What in it is binding? I think that this is not just with the laity, but even with the bishops and the priests, this is a cloud that has hung over the church for 60 years. And while I'm not claiming I'm going to solve it at all, I think for a lay person who is going to, even a lay, quote unquote, normie, who attends the new Mass and just, does all the normal standard things, this synod is going to push them in places they don't want to go. And they're going to start having to ask questions. If they haven't already. If they're still in the church today, they probably have questions. And, as we have unfortunately seen in the Diocese of Charlotte, the current Pope does not seem able or willing to act in what I would admit at least a hasty manner. It would be very quick if he overturned tradition as custodes, but he does not seem ready to come to the rescue of the old rite of Mass. The only comment he has made on it is that it would be good to discuss it at the Synod on Synodality. So good luck getting your Latin Mass back now. We're going to need another game plan. A lot of people online, I have made some posts on Twitter about how we can't rely on Rome anymore. That was our great hope, was that Pope Francis had this strange anger and animosity towards the old Mass. So with a new pope, that would dissipate, that would get overturned. That's not looking likely. We need plan B. But we also need to make sense of the council and how to practice our faith, how to discern, what practices to adopt, or maybe what practices to recover. Which one's better? How do we live our lives during one of the most confusing, crisis-ridden times in all of church history? So that will be the aim of my channel. I actually really didn't know what the aim of my channel would be when I made it. I wanted to post an independent video about the statistics that I basically argued with certain people online about. I'm still going to do that. Obviously, there's been a lot of news stories that have broken recently, so I got a little distracted. But that is the name of the channel, Pre-Conciliar Radio, and that will be generally the angle of all the content that I push out. So we have a new rosary. Will you pray the new rosary? I won't. Do I pray the latest mysteries that St. John Paul II? I don't have anything particularly against it, but no. And I have various reasons for not doing that. I am pre-conciliar. And if you want to call me schismatic for thinking that or for practicing that way, get ready, because we're all going to be schismatics soon. You're normal now, but the Synod on Synodality, if you don't get that booster, you'll be a rigid trad just like me. So buckle up and look forward to speaking to you guys later.